Okay, let's talk about voice and data, right? So in a Wi-Fi network, voice and data are probably that's what people want to use on a Wi-Fi network, on the Wi-Fi, voice or data, right? So as we know that the data applications can withstand L2 retransmissions of up to 10%, they should be okay. But same when we do for voice, the layer 2 retransmissions should only be let's change that to should only be 5%. Life is good. If it goes beyond 5, we can start, if this goes beyond 5%, then we can start to expect latency and jitter, right? This is going to cause the clients to have a choppy audio, clients to drop a call. In that scenario, the data should work absolutely fine anyway, right? So this kind of becomes very important, that when you design a network at the beginning, if you know that there's going to be voice and data, always design for voice, design for minus 65 dBm, design to make sure the clients on the ground should be able to have a voice call without a drop. There are less number of L2 retransmissions happening, right? And that is very very important when designing a network for voice or data. Okay, so usually how I have seen this turn out is, when you go and meet the customer and you go and look to design a network, initially there is no requirement for voice, and that's where the problem starts. Because if the customer tells you it's a data requirement, you start to design for data, right? And you know that at that time the clients, even if there is 10% retransmissions happening, the problems will go unnoticed, and nobody is going to really care because there's nothing on the ground that's happening. And so life is good, even if there are 10% of retransmissions happening. However, in the same network, after a few years, when you start to deploy voice as well, then this design fails, right? This will fail because the retransmissions are now 10%, and your voice applications will start to drop. You will see a lot of drop, a lot of choppy audio, a lot of jitter happening in the network, which is going to cause you a lot of headache when troubleshooting the network. So again, that's what happens in most of the organizations. But in a few where you get the idea of if you get the idea that voice and data will both will be used, always design for voice. In this scenario, yes, you might just want to have to redesign, and you have to do some research before you redesign the network, talk to the customer and understand about the requirement clearly. And that's so that's really going to help you out, because the voice over Wi-Fi phones that you're going to use in the network, they will have a choppy audio. They're probably going to disconnect the calls, and that's going to cause a lot of issues on the ground to the users, right? It will still anyway go unnoticed with the data laptops, because they can withstand that many transmissions. So there are some fundamental differences between voice and video traffic, sorry, voice and data traffic. So let's talk about that a bit. uh, okay, let's make a table so that it gets easy. The data traffic is of variable size. Okay, this is a variable sized packet. The voice traffic is usually small in size, and it's a non-uniform packet. Okay, hang on, let me correct this. Small but uniform size packets. Okay, that is number one. Number two is that data basically has a bursty delivery, whereas in voice there has to be an even and predictable delivery. always. The third difference would be that the data is minimally affected by late or inconsistent delivery, right? As we saw because of the L2 retransmissions, minimally affected due to late and inconsistent delivery. Whereas voice is highly affected by late or inconsistent delivery. Is highly affected by late or inconsistent packet delivery, right? There's one more difference. For data we can say better late than never. Okay, better late than never. The packet can come a little late, it's absolutely acceptable. But with voice we say better never than late. Okay, so these are the four differences between the way voice and data packets are handled, and we want to make sure that when we go and optimize the network, always optimize the network for voice, because data will automatically work on that. Data will work just fine. Okay, so yeah, I mean, always go and optimize if you get a chance, because I've seen a lot of customers, they are running a data network. The design was done on data, and then when voice comes in the picture, they start to face a lot of issues on the ground. Then they start opening tag tickets, and then when someone comes and tells them they need to do a site survey once again, design the network for voice, it's not a very pleasing thing to hear, because it's going to cost them a lot of money. And so these kind of things need to be discussed in person. Talk to the customer, explain it to them. More often than not they will understand, because they also know that when the network was deployed it was on data. Explain them why you need to do a redesign, why layer 2 retransmissions are less needed in voice, and data is okay with more retransmissions. Explain them. I think more often than not they will understand. But if you get a chance to optimize the network, do it for voice all the time, and data will follow. And more often than not, when you do a design, when you have a customer deployment or a customer discussion going on initially, even before the design or deployment, just let the customer know about this, that if you have a plan to deploy voice in the next few years, why not design the network for voice only, so that when voice comes in the future, the network should be absolutely ready. That's what we do when we do a design. These are all so this is supposed to be our job as design engineers. If you are acting like a design engineer, you need to talk to the customer about all these things, get the feel of how the network will look like in the next 5 years, understand from them, and then once they tell you that yes, they expect voice to come in the future, that's a no-brainer. Then you've got to deploy the network for voice, so that there are no issues in the future going on, right? So do that, and I think you should be pretty okay with the future in the deployment.